Ready? Let's go. All right, it's time to talk about when. When? That's the last W that we're supposed to talk about in terms of questions. When, in terms of podcasting, there's two whens I want to talk to you about right now. Number one is frequency. When are you going to be releasing your podcast? And there's a lot of debate on this. There's no magic bullet. There's no 100% rock solid answer. But I would say if you're thinking about creating podcasts, start to think about your frequency. Start to think about how often you want to be creating content. Typically, shows that are successful show up at least weekly. Now, this doesn't mean that you need to be creating content weekly. You can, creating a show once a week and releasing it, or you could be creating shows and creating content in batches. You could sit down one weekend and record 5 or 6 episodes. And if you're releasing weekly, there's 5 or 6 weeks worth of content that you can set to release. And you can schedule through your hosting company when those episodes will come out and space it nicely. Typically, I tell people the earlier in the week, the better. Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays are pretty good. Thursdays, Fridays, and the weekends start to fall off in terms of people's attention span. So I tell people, listen, the bottom line, weekly if you can, earlier in the week if you can, in terms of when you're actually going to drop that audio. So think about that. Think about what's sustainable for you, because what's sustainable for you is going to get done. This is very, very similar in terms of prescribing exercise or behavior change. What do you like to do? What do you have room for in your schedule? And maybe you've got a little bit of room right now. You can do it weekly. And maybe, hey, after 6 months, this thing has some traction. You like it a lot more and you carve out more and more time. But let's just say weekly to start. And a little pro tip, if you want to make the first batch or the first couple of months of your podcast a little bit lighter on you, because again, you're going to be going through processes and things that you haven't done before. This is all new to you. Record that batch. Record 6 episodes. Get 6 episodes in the can, as they say, recorded and ready to schedule those out. What this will allow you to do too is take a breath, right? You turn this thing on, record a bunch of episodes, and exhale, and maybe be able to sit back and listen to those episodes like your audience is listening to those episodes. Are they listening to them once a week? Or maybe someone finds your show 6 weeks in when you've already released 6 episodes and they binge on it. So take a look at maybe from the audience's perspective on how frequent this advice or this information or this entertainment might actually be. So that's one way to think about when in terms of podcasting. The second way to think about when is like this. There are 3 distinct instructions on the back of every bottle of shampoo. And you've never even probably looked at the bottle of shampoo, but you know how to use it. You lather, you rinse, and then you repeat. I want you to think about that in terms of recording. I want you to think about, recording, releasing, and repeating, whether that's all at once in a batch of 3 or 6 or 12 episodes and spreading them out, or if you want to think about once a week, lather, rinse, and repeat. And here's why, and the magic number is 7. The industry rule in communications and marketing is that it takes the average consumer, in your case, listener or potential listener, about 7 impressions before they'll actually follow your call to action. So let's unpack some of those words. It takes about 7 impressions. Seeing your podcast, seeing the value, seeing your name or logo, or being exposed to your brand about 7 times before they'll actually follow your call to action. And what I mean by call to action is buy now on Amazon. That's a call to action. Or download this, or listen. In your case, listen is your call to action. So keep that in mind. That's where that frequency, that's where that regularity, that's where lather, rinse, repeat comes in. Because I understand you've got an amazing podcast. In your eyes and your ears, your podcast is going to be the most important podcast in the world. But to your audience or potential audience, it's going to be one of millions of podcast options and one of billions of things they could be doing with their time. So keep in mind that frequency, the more you produce and the more frequently you can produce, the better chance that you have of someone following that call to action. And one more pro tip, one more thing I want you thinking about. You're releasing a weekly show. Let's say you decide on weekly, that's your frequency. And you're going to do that you're going to commit to a year, so 52 weekly shows. Remember that when you're releasing episode number 37, you'll still be getting downloads on episode number 1. So what I want you thinking about is you're building a content library. So just because you don't have a gigantic audience at episode 6, don't get discouraged. Someone might trip across episode 22, love everything they're hearing, really connect with you. And then they'll say what you say and what I say on Hulu or Netflix or Amazon Movies. They'll go all the way back to the beginning and they'll binge on that. So keep in mind that traction takes time. You're building a relationship. Pop quiz. What is the goal of public relations? That's what you're doing here, right? You're building, you're conducting, you're doing public relations. What's the goal of public relations? Well, the answer is in the question. The goal of public relations is to build a relationship with the public. And that only comes over time. And in your case, the relationship is you giving your information and giving your entertainment or bonus points if you can do both at the same time. So keep that in mind. If you launch and you don't get an explosion of downloads, that's okay. That does not mean the audience or your potential audience who's out there isn't going to value what you're doing and what you will do. Give it some time and conduct public relations. Slowly build that relationship over time. Over time, that comes with frequency.